Indo-US diplomatic row over diplomat Devyani Khobragade arrested over visa fraud and then released on bail is a major setback from her. We're hearing a US judge has denied her request to extend the deadline of a hearing.
Well, that deadline was the 13th of January, and that's when she had to be indicted. Meanwhile, a row now escalates. An undersecretary in the US government has cancelled a scheduled trip to India, even as the Washington Post has slammed India's crackdown on the US embassy as petty, vindictive and not worthy of a democracy. In the week since her arrest, India has asked the US embassy to shut down all restaurants, bars and even bowling alleys, along with all other commercial activities.
The matter is sub judice in the US, and we are in touch with the State Department. We are constantly, every day, communicating with them. They are giving us their point of view. We are giving them our point of view. Let us hope that there is convergence between those two points of view. If there is a problem about their internal processes and their laws, we are willing to help. We must together find a solution.
Let's talk to our Foreign Affairs editor Suhasini Haidar joining us now on the phone line. Good morning, Suhasini. Hearing from Salman Khurshid there, of course, India and US trying to figure out a way to resolve this, even as a judge denied her plea for an extension of hearing. And there are reports now that the ME and Devyani Khobragade might not be on the same page necessarily.
Good morning, Amrita. Yes, absolutely. And this case does seem to get more and more complicated by the day. First, the impression certainly seems to now have become in India that there is a direct connection with what the State Department is negotiating with India and what the Department of Justice is doing in that New York court. The truth is that that court case is going ahead as is scheduled, and now on January the 13th, we will see the first date. Devyani Khobragade does not actually have to produce herself in court for it. But that first date of arraignment will happen on January 13th, now that the judge in New York has ruled on the matter. As far as the State Department negotiations go, we did see reports that, in fact, the U.S. Secretary of State, John Kerry, was discussing this issue with President Obama. He certainly had a meeting last night. We're still waiting to see details of it. But what we did see is the U.S. State Department coming out and, like Mr. Salman Khurshid, again and again saying that we have to work this out, that officials in both India and the U.S. are in touch on a daily basis, trying to find a way out. As regards the question you asked about the differences between the MEA and Devyani Khobragade, the fact is that while Devyani Khobragade and her lawyer will be pursuing this case with the idea of her own difficulties with it and trying to perhaps lessen the charges rather than completely, which is called a plea bargain there in the United States. For the MEA, this is a matter of principle. Khobragade is not the only Indian diplomat to have been charged in this way, and the Ministry of External Affairs really wants to make the principle that there must be a law that would allow Indian diplomats to have their Indian-born domestic assistance and not have to adhere to the American wage law.
Right, and Suhasini, even as the developments over, at the diplomatic circles continue on the ground between both countries, they continue to do a tit for tat, really, as far as the kind of diplomatic privileges both countries are getting. Now we're hearing that an undersecretary is cancelling his trip to India.
Well, certainly there's already been one cancellation. Arunodaya, earlier in the month, we heard that the Undersecretary of State for South and Central Asia, Nisha Biswal, had called off her visit to India, given the kind of tensions. What we do understand is the energy dialogue that was to have taken place between those two countries is now being put off as well. We did hear from the State Department about an ongoing dialogue on space exploration, which India is attending in Washington today. But absolutely, right now, the situation is that only the State Department officials and the Indian officials who are dealing with the Devyani Khobragade are actually in touch. All other negotiations between them have been called off. And remember, it was the Indian Joint Secretary in charge of Americas who called in Ambassador Nancy Powell last week and said there can be no business as usual between India and the US until this issue has been resolved. So it really does seem as if everything now hinges on Devyani Khobragade's case there in New York. Certain embarrassment coming out of the fact as it became clear that Devyani Khobragade, despite all the furor over the Department of Justice and Mr. Preet Bharara's case against her, was actually in a plea bargain negotiation with that New York office. And some of those details has certainly been an embarrassment for the Ministry of External Affairs.